Okay, we're ready to start part 2, 16b of chapter 16 of Basics of Biblical Hebrew. We'll have a Hebrew insight on actually formation of some nouns, and then we'll go over the workbook and see if there's any questions, and we'll also go over the translations, and then we'll continue on with the Qal Imperfect Weak Verbs as part 2. We'll have a quick review in there too on what we looked at last week, but we're not going to spend much time on that. So for the Hebrew insight, we've seen relationship between nouns and verbs to the root, and this will look familiar. We've seen that this came from chapter 13, and we have the mem, lamed, kaf root, and from that we can make words, nouns like king and queen, melech, malcha, and malkut, kingdom. We can also make verbs like malach. It means he reigned, or when we get to the he feel, this is a he feel. How do we know? Because we have the he right there, and then the I part, he feel, that I part and the he part, so we can see that. So that's he caused to reign, or he caused to be king. But anyway, all of these are based off of, we can see easily they're coming off of the same root. So we can see a relationship between Melech, king, and Malach, he ruled. In lesson 13 in the insight, we talked about kever, which is grave, and it looks very similar. Kever looks similar to kavar, which means he buried. And so this relationship between verbs and nouns, it's often easy to see if you're familiar with the word, to recognize the meaning of it, even if it's not been a part of your vocabulary. Where you see this comets, patak, vowel combination, you know it's going to be a verb as opposed to the seglet, two segles there. But Hebrew has another way of making nouns. They can take a verb and put a mem on the front of it, and it turns it into the place of that verb. So here's some examples. In Jeremiah 16:19, we see the verb nous, which means to flee. And if you put a mem in front of it, it becomes manos. And manos is the place to which you flee. And we normally would translate that as a refuge. So it becomes the place of fleeing. In that same verse, God refers to the word for strength. One of the words for strength is oz. And when you add the mem to it, it becomes ma'oz, and it becomes the place of strength. And that'll often be translated as a stronghold or a fortress. Holy is the same way in Jeremiah 17:12. You have the word holy. If you put a mem in front of it, it becomes the place of holiness, mikdash. Mikdash is the place of holiness, but we usually translate that like sanctuary. That's the place of holiness. And then chasa is to seek refuge. You put a mem in front of it, it becomes machse, and it's the place of refuge. And you can either just translate it as a refuge or a shelter or something like that. But wait, there's more. Yashar means he was straight, but he put a mem in front of it, mishor, and it becomes the place of straightness, which would be like level ground. That's in Jeremiah 48:21, level ground, mishor, the place of straightness. Shakan means he dwelled, but he put a mem in front of it, and it becomes mishkan. Mishkan becomes the place of dwelling, or a dwelling place. It's often used in the reference here is 1 Chronicles 6:17, but it's often used even in the reference to in Exodus to building the preparing and the materials and building the tabernacle, and it'll refer to the tent of meeting sometimes as the Mishkan. It's the place of dwelling or just a dwelling place. And then Zerach means rise, rising. You put a mem in front of it, Mizrach becomes the place of rising, which is the east, or it could be referring to the sunrise, but it's the place of rising, Mizrach. And That's one of the ways of saying east. Kedem is another word for saying east. But this one is the place of the sunrise, actually. And then on the other side of that, we have Erev, which means evening. And you put a mem in front of that, and it becomes ma'arav, and it becomes the place of evening, or west, or the place where the sun sets. And so those are just some examples. That is not an exhaustive list. Um, there's It's just interesting the way that they use the language and could actually make a place of something by putting a mem in front of it. So with that, are there any questions from the workbook? And this was only for 16A. The workbook has it divided 16A and 16B. I don't see that I noted any errors in this one. Okay, I hear no questions, so let's go ahead and go through the translations. They start on page 62, continues on 63. We have 10 translations. And so the first one is from 1 Samuel 24:11. We have not, I will send. All right, so let's just look at that. We're talking about, remember here on chapter 16, we're talking about imperfect weak verbs. And sure enough, we have a 3 het on the second word there, eshlach. And so we see the aleph in the front. That's going to be our preformative for the first common singular. And it's negated, not I will send, or you just turn around and say, I will not send. Yadi, the hand of me, ba'adoni, on or against my Lord. Notice Adoni, this doesn't have anything to do with the lesson in chapter 16, but just the ni ending, that's the first person common singular ending. And Adon is singular, but sometimes God is referred to as Adonai, and that's plural. It's still first person singular on the end, but it's Lord's plural, and that's often used for God. Anyway, so let me get a running start here again. I will not send, or not I will send the hand of me, or my hand, on or against my Lord. Ki, because Mashiach, that may sound familiar to you, the anointed one, Messiah. So because anointed one of Yahweh, he. And so we'd probably add a to be verb in there, is, he is the anointed one of Yahweh. Number 2, 2 Kings 17:38. And the covenant which I cut. Okay, that's a Qal perfect. We just have the subformative there, and then we treat it as past. I cut with you, not you will forget, not you all will forget. Notice the tav preformative. Notice the shurik subformative. That's going to be a second person masculine plural, and again, that's another 3 het verb. Not you all will forget. Number 3, Psalm 35:10. All the bones of me, they will say, Yahweh, who as you, or who, we could add the to be verb in there, is, who is like you. You could say it that way, who as you. The third word in, we see the tav performative, we see the na subformative, and so that's going to be a feminine. It's going to be either second or third feminine plural. They both have the same form, the tav on the front on the preformative and the na on the subformative. And why is it feminine? It's because bones are feminine. And that is a 1 aleph. They will say, Amar is the word, and that's a 1 aleph, weak verb, imperfect. Number 4, Psalm 33:11. The counsel of Yahweh, when I say there's no the there. Well, it's construct. The counsel of, and then Yahweh is definite. It's a name, it's definite. And so the counsel of Yahweh, to forever or for forever, she will stand. Okay, why is it she will stand? Because the tav preformative could be a second masculine singular or a third feminine singular. But counsel is feminine. You see that feminine tav at the end of it. So she will stand for forever or to forever, she will stand. So yeah, the tav preformative on that final word, no subformative. So it's third feminine singular. Number 5, coming from Exodus 13:6. 7 of days you will eat. Let's just pause there. We see the tav preformative. So it's either going to be second masculine singular or third feminine singular, but this is second masculine just by context. But the word itself is Qal. A Qal is a one aleph. So this is a weak one aleph verb. Okay, so 7 of days you will eat unleavened bread, and in the day, the seventh, a feast to Yahweh. Number 6, in 1 Samuel 19:4, not he will sin. Let's stop there. We have a yod preformative. This is imperfect. If it has a preformative, it's an imperfect. And we have a one chet verb here, cheta, cheta. So not he will sin, or this could be actually a jussive where it's saying let not him sin. The king against the servant of him, against David, because not he sinned to you or against you or for you. You can probably just say against you for better English. That was from 1 Samuel 19:4. Okay, then number 7 from Genesis 2:24. On thus, which could be brought over as something like therefore, but just woodenly going through each word here, on thus. And then the third word there, we see a one ayin, so there's a one guttural. And we see the yod preformative, so that's going to be third masculine singular. So on thus he will leave a man, the father of him, and mother of him. Number 8, Joshua 8:5, and I and all the people who, probably add the to be verb are with me, we will draw near to the city. The we will draw near, nikrav, the noon preformative is a first person common plural. We will draw near, and it's an imperfect, so that's why we're saying because it's a preformative, it's an imperfect, and imperfects we translate usually as future. And we have a two resh, the second letter of the root is resh, and that affects the that can affect it and be a weak verb also. Number 9 comes from 1 Kings 6:13. And I will dwell. I'll come back and talk about that in a little bit. And I will dwell in the midst of the sons of Israel, and not I will leave, or not I will forsake the people of me, Israel. Israel being the people of me, or my people. Let's see, so 1, 2, 3, if you count the direct object marker, definite direct object marker, is the one right before that. I will leave, or I will forsake. It's a one ayin, so it's one guttural, and the aleph again is the preformative for first common singular. I will leave, or I will forsake. Not I will leave, or not I will forsake the people of me, Israel. And then number 10, Exodus 3:15. Thus you will say to the sons of Israel, Yahweh, God of the fathers of you all, or your all's fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and God of Jacob, he sent me to you all. This, and we probably have to insert another to be verb, is the name of me forever. We had several of those. That's something to keep in mind, that oftentimes Hebrew does not need to include a to be verb, but in English we have to have it. So let's see. The second word into number 10 here, we have the tav preformative, tomar. So that's going to be second masculine singular. Thus you will say, the sons of Israel. Let's see. He sent me. There's no preformative, just a subformative, so that's a Qal perfect. He sent me. And I think that's pretty much it. Any questions on any of those? All right, then we will begin. Oh, I should have changed that. Oh, no, 16A review. The review is correct. That is correct. 16A. We're going to do a quick review on what we covered last week and then get into 16B. Weak verbs are weak because of all the same letters and rules we've studied in previous chapters. We went over these in 14, and now we're going over them again in 16, and a lot of these things we learned even back in chapter 3. So there's not that much new here. We just need to look and see what happens to the word. And the imperfect paradigm is the same. The preformatives, subformatives do not change in any of these. And that's really the big thing. You know, they say you're supposed to keep the most important thing, and that's really what the most important thing is here in this lesson, is that the paradigm does not change. The preformatives, subformatives do not change. We need to, and a lot of this just has to do with figuring out what the root word was. What did we start with before they added anything to the front or to the back, or it was affected because it had a guttural or some other letter that drops out or something like that. So we're trying to understand what the word is and be able to parse it, and that's the main thing. So we're talking about Qal imperfect. We're looking at active, simple action, and it's incomplete action. So we have yiktol, he will kill. We translate it as future. Hebrew conjugations are not tenses. We don't have tenses in Hebrew. They mostly indicate aspect. So we've looked at the Qal perfect, which is looking at a completed action. And now we're looking at the imperfect. This was chapter 13 and 14. And then in chapters 15 and 16, we're looking at continual action or repeated action, or it's incomplete. It's translated as future. Imperfect verbs are normally translated in English for the future tense. So yiktol means he will kill. If we didn't have the preformative, of course, the vowels would change too, but katal would be katal. He killed, past tense, but yiktol, he will kill. Now, next chapter, chapter 17, we're going to see there's an exception to that. We go into the opposite zone, is what I'll be calling it. And we want to review the Qal imperfect strong verb paradigm. This is the way it is in the book. I struggle with that. If that's the way you want to learn it, that's okay. I found it much easier to learn it in first, second, third person sequence. So we'll just go through these quickly. Again, ektol, tiktol, tiktali, yiktol, tiktol, niktol, tiktalu, tiktolna, yiktalu, tiktolna. Notice you have every one of them has a preformative. Half of them have subformatives. Most of the subformatives are in the plural. Only the second feminine singular has a subformative. And the first common plural does not have one. But those, it's really important to be able to look at it and recognize it. And you see that olive on the front and go, oh, that's a 1CS. Or if you see a yod, like here on the 3MP, have a yod on the front, a shirt on the back, recognizes as third masculine plural. That's very important to be able to know who's doing what. It just makes it a lot easier to know, the person, gender, number of the verb. Very important. Qal perfect, the Qal imperfect, well, Qal perfect as well. The Qal perfect and the Qal imperfect paradigms have to be memorized. But you memorize them once now. Memorize the Qal perfect from chapter 13. You memorize the Qal imperfect from chapter 15. We're going to be using those for the rest, almost all of the rest of the book. Those will not change. You'll be able to look at it when you know what the preformatives and subformatives are. You'll be able to look and say, oh, I don't know what word this is, but I know that this is a first person common singular, or I know that this is a third masculine plural, or something like that. The preformatives and subformatives will stay the same with us. We don't have to memorize on every single verb stem or derived stem. So again, this will be primarily a review, stuff that we've all looked at already. We've already looked at the imperfect strong verb paradigm. We'll talk a little bit about identifying weak verbs, and then the syllable rules from chapter 3, which we've done last week. We did this back in chapter 14. We're doing it again now. Again, the main goal is recognition of the forms. You want to be able to parse it. You want to be able to recognize it. Oh, it's got a preformative. It's a imperfect, or there's no preformative at all, and then it would be a perfect, not an imperfect. If it's all it has, it's a subformative. And we want to recognize the stem is called. The conjugation is imperfect. We want to get the person, gender, and number. And then what was the word, the meaning of the word that's used here, and that is applying these things to. And so, again, the imperfect verbs in the derived stems use the same preformatives and subformatives. It's so important to know those. And the goal is recognition. You're going to want to recognize the root, and you're going to want to recognize how to parse it. That's the main thing. Weak verbs can have weak consonants in the first position, second position, third position, or multiple positions, or root. Root, this would be an R1, R2, R3, and this would be a double, just a double. Doubly weak. So what about these letters? Yod, Vav, Nun, Hey. We've seen this over again. We'll see it again, though. Those letters, and this is how you spell Jonah's name, Yonah, Yonah. What do we know about those letters? They like to drop out. So last week we looked at one gutturals and one alepphs, which, yes, aleph is a guttural, and so it's kind of in the same category. However, we had to treat it separately because there's some different changes there. Then we looked at two gutturals, 3 chet, ayin, and we looked at 3 alepphs. So just quickly, the one gutturals, there's 2 types. The first type, we have the segel, E vowel, and we see that here. And when it has the reduced segol under the guttural, the preformative will mirror it. We'll have this double segol, or actually it's a segol in a reduced segol there. And the stem vowel is an A vowel. So that's one guttural. Again, the main thing is recognizing we have preformative here. There's no subformative. And this katol stem means kill. And this kazak means strong, and is usually used in the sense of like seizing or something like that. But we see the yod preformative. We know that's third masculine singular for both of these. That's the thing. We want to write what's the word and what do we have for preformatives? What do we have for subformatives? We don't have any on this particular example. Okay, the type 2 for the one gutturals. The gutturals generally prefer an A-type vowel. And then again, and so instead of having the schwa here, we get the reduced patak. And again, the preformative will mirror the reduced vowel. So we have a patak and a reduced patak together here. And so that's the type 2. So gutturals prefer the A-type vowels. They don't always get an A vowel. But whether they get an A vowel or not, we still have this reduced sagol and a sagol. Let me see, if we go back, okay, this is still, here's some of this. This is still a yod preformative, no subformative. This is still third masculine singular. He will kill, he will stand. He will stand. Amod is to stand. So ya amod, he will stand. Okay, now we're looking at I will kill, all right? And this is I will stand. I will stand because we have the aleph preformative as opposed to the yod. The other screen had yod on both of these. We have the aleph. Aleph is the one common singular preformative, and we don't have a subformative. So again, you're looking for what's the word? Okay, this has to do with killing. What's this word? It has to do with standing, and this is telling it I. I will kill, I will stand. Okay, then we also looked at the one alephs, which is still a one guttural, but they're a little different. There are 4 types. The first 2 types, type 1 here, the vowels match with of course, this is the strong example, and this is the weak example, but the vowels remain the same. Forms with subformatives begin with a vowel will have an A vowel. Okay, we see that here. We have the A vowel because we have a subformative with a vowel sound. Okay, so it has an A vowel. But if we don't have, like here, we don't have a subformative with a vowel sound, and so then it has an E vowel. And so on the top row here, we have he will kill. And then the second one below that here, he will bind. We have a yod preformative. That's third masculine singular. There's no subformative. Over here on the right-hand side, we have a yod preformative and we have a shurik subformative. Those are all third masculine plural. So this is they will kill and they will bind. There's sometimes that's used for saddle. I think I mentioned that last week. See, if you're saddled to your donkey, you're binding it with the saddle. Okay, then type 2, one alephs, you get an O vowel and an A vowel. Okay, again, the main thing is, what's the word? This one's kill, amar. That one's to say. We have a preformative, a yod preformative, that's third masculine singular. We have no subformative, and so it's just the third masculine singular. So then the type 3 and type 4s, you can go through. I had this exact same slide last week. But as you go through and look at it, you still see the same types of things. You see, like here on the second feminine singular, you have the preformatives are the same. The strong, this is what we memorize. You have the hirik yod at the end. It doesn't change. All you have to do is be able to recognize the root, what is the word, and then you look at the preformatives and subformatives to determine what the person, gender, and number is. On the third masculine singular, yod preformative, yod preformative, yod preformative. It's the same thing for all of them. Even though there might be some vowel differences. Is it good to know the vowel changes? Yes, it's good to know the vowel changes and what to expect and why it changes. Those are all important. What's the main thing? On my first time through here, going through Hebrew, learning Hebrew, what do I need to concentrate on? we need to concentrate on recognizing the word and recognizing the preformatives and subformatives. So if you have a tav preformative, it could be third feminine singular. It could be second masculine singular. Context will tell you. If you have a tav preformative and a shurik, it's going to be second masculine plural. And it doesn't matter which one you're looking at, you can still find that. So that's why it's so important. And it's important to remember all the things that stay the same. And vowel changes, remember what you can, but and some are just rules, like gutturals prefer A vowels. There's just some things about the rules you can hang on to too without having memorized details on all the different options on vowel changes. But we want to be able to recognize the word. So 2 gutturals, just a quick summary screen here. We went into more detail. Obviously, gutturals cannot take the schwa, the vocal schwa, yeek, yeek to lu, yeek to lu. The thing is, we see a preformative, we see a subformative. This is third masculine plural. So they will kill or they will choose. But the main thing here is that this het is going to take a reduced A vowel of patak. And then third het ayins, they changed vowels from the O vowel to the A vowel. And then for third aleph, whenever you have a aleph that quiesces, it has no vowel, no sound to it at all, the vowel in front of it lengthens. And it's good to remember those things, but the main thing is to be able to look at the word and say, oh, matzah, or oh, shalach, or bachar, and then look at it and see, okay, we got yod preformative, no subformative on either one of those. That's the important thing to learn. So that's the review. Now we'll get into the rest of the chapter. And so we're going to look at the 1 yod verbs. We're going to look at 1 noon verbs. We're going to look at the 3 hey verbs. We'll look at geminates, doubly weak. We're going to talk about reconstructing. That's rebuilding the stem. What word is it? If things dropped out, or what happened to it? How can we figure out what the word is? That's what that part is. And also look at the biconsonant. So that's where we're going tonight. The 1 yod paradigm is on page 167, and I'm going to turn to that, and we're just going to leave our books open because we're going to go through some of these things kind of quickly and just observe, like on page 167, it's at the top of the page. If you go down and just pick one, well, like let's take the third masculine plural about halfway down, and you notice the yod preformative and the shurik subformative. And you go to the next column, yod preformative and shurik subformative. And you go to the third column, you see the yod preformative and the shurik subformative. You have the yod and the shurik on every one of these in the strong, like we do in the strong. The first column, that's yashav, it means to dwell or to sit. The second column is halak. What does halak have to do with the 1 yod? Well, halak acts like it's a 1 yod, and so they always lump it in. I mean, this isn't just this grammar. This is common. Just, you hear it a lot. Halak behaves as a 1 yod verb, and so and that means to walk or to go. Halak, and then yashar is to. I'm sorry. That means straight. This is Yeresh. Yeresh is means to possess or dispossess, and you just have to go by context to know whether it's somebody dispossessing somebody or somebody is possessing something. But if you possess it, in the case of like going in and conquering the land, if you possess the land, you're dispossessing others. So that's what that word is. But anyway, you get to go down through here and you find out that the 3MS, we see the yod preformative every single time. We'll talk about these in detail. Again, if you go down like the 3 masculine plural, see the yod preformative and the shurik subformative all the way across. That doesn't change. All right. So let's go look at some of these things in detail now. So yod, what do we know about yod? And what do we know about noon? Because we're going to talk about noons next. That's a part of the Jonah name. Those are the ones that like to fall out, and we already saw that. So they fell out again. So when it comes to one yods, there's two types. Type 2, we'll start with that because it's easy. Type 2, the yod does not drop out. That would be, well, that's in the third column on page 167. The yod does not drop out. So we have Yarash, that means, like say, possess or dispossess. That's the perfect, Qal perfect. So it'd be he possessed or he dispossessed. All right. And so we want to make an imperfect out of it. And so we're going to add a yod preformative. So it'd still be third masculine singular. And so you just add it to the front. And the R1 letter actually becomes a part of the Hiric yod here. So that's the root letter. And the first yod is the preformative. So, yeah, it becomes part of the Hiric yod. So we have Yirash, which means he will. Okay, and then comparing it to Yiktol there, it really hasn't changed much at all. So it means he will, because we have the yod preformative. It's an imperfect. That means we're going to translate as future. And so he will possess or he will dispossess. So that's pretty easy. Type 2, the yod drops out. When the yod drops out, we usually get compensatory lengthening. We'll look at that too. So yashav means to dwell or to sit. He sat, he dwelled. That's a Qal perfect, so translate it past. And then, so we take the root there, yashav, and we're going to add a yod preformative for third masculine singular. The yod drops out, the preformative moves in, and now we have yishav. And then because the yod dropped out, we get compensatory lengthening, and the Hiric will become a tsere. It's like that. So yeshev means he will sit or he will dwell. So that's the thing to look for. If you see the lengthened vowel there, the tsere, then you know, okay, something dropped out. Okay, what dropped out? In this case, it was yod, but perhaps it was a noon or something else. There's that's something to take note of when you get that lengthened vowel under the preformative. Okay, then comparing the two, you can see that we're missing the R1 here. The R1 is here on the Katol, Yiktol. But instead of the Hiric vowel, we have the tsere. It lengthened, compensatory lengthening. Okay, so yeshev means he will sit, he will dwell. All right, then moving on to the next page, 168. We have the one noon verbs. Now, the first column, the left column, is nafal, or in this one is yipol, but nafal would be means to fall. He fell. So this is all of these have the falling. Then we have lachak. Well, that's not a one noon. Well, it's kind of like halak is like a one yod. Lachak behaves like a one noon. And so they have that example in here. The lamed drops out. As far as I know, those are the only ones, lachak and halak. I think those are the only ones that act this way. Let's see. And then the last column, the doubly weak column, is inheriting. Nachal is to inherit. So he will inherit, she will inherit, so forth. And then again, we have the strong. The strong on the right-hand side, that's what we memorized. And so we know that noons can drop out, and we see that it does all the way down. But as you look all the way down, all the preformatives, all the subformatives, all are the same. They did not change. Okay, we'll look at it in a little bit more detail now on the screen. So, two types of one noon. Type 1, the noon drops out. Guess what? For type 2, the noon drops out. Okay, that's pretty consistent. The noon drops out pretty easily. Okay, and the type 1 is going to be a holum stem vowel, and type 2 is going to be a patoc stem vowel. Gutturals prefer A vowels. So let's look at these in detail now. Type 1, again, the noon does drop out. So there's nafal, we talked about it. It means he fell. And we want to add a preformative. We want to make it say, he will fall. Turn it into a future, he will fall. Well, the noon drops out. There it goes. The yod moves over. And so we have yipol, but the noon, when it dropped out, it's going to be replaced not by compensatory lengthening, but by a dagesh. So we get the dagesh and the pay, yipol. And that means he will fall, just as yiktol as he will kill. Again, the thing to notice, what is the word? You just have to know this is nafal, that the noon dropped out. That's the trick in this. But as long as you recognize that, you're okay. Then again, we have the preformatives. We have no subformatives, so this is still 3ms, third masculine singular. Okay. So yeah, go away from the red dagesh. You don't get red dageshes in the text. So he will fall. So then type 2, the noon again drops out and is replaced by a dagesh forte. Forms with vowel letter subformatives will not have the dagesh forte. That's the tricky part. So we have yisu. We have the preformative. We have the subformative. We know this is going to be third masculine plural. Okay. Now, what we don't have is the dagesh right here, which tells us that the noon dropped out. But the noon did drop out. But the reason we don't have the dagesh is because of the subformative, the vowel letter subformative. Okay. They will set out, or you say they pulled out. That would be another way of translating it. They pulled out. All right, then we'll look at the 3 hays. That's on page 169, next page over. So we don't have a whole bunch of, we just have the 3 hay. This is bana, that's built, he built, for the Qal perfect past tense of the he built. And then we have the one we memorize, the strong column. And we talked about this when we looked at the well, it must have been chapter 14. We had, yes, chapter 14, we did look at the weak verbs on this. Now we're looking at, that was perfect. Now we're looking at imperfect. So for 3 hay, we have 3 rules. The 3 hay verbs were originally 3 yod verbs. The segol hay ending is an ending. It's not a subformative. And you can't have 2 vowels in a row. Those are the 3 rules for 3 hays. All right. So the first one, the 3 hay is really a 3 yod. As we look in the book, we can see that it shows up in the 3FP and the 2FP. We have the yod in there instead of the hay. But in the others, we don't get the yod. So if we want to make build into either a 2FS or a 3FS, I'm sorry, plural, 2FP and a 3FP. We have the Qal here, Qal. We see the tav preformative. We see the na subformative. When it comes to bana, we have the tav preformative and the na subformative, and we still have the yod there that took the place of the hay, or however you want to look at that, or the hay took the place of the yod at some point. but the preformatives and subformatives remain the same. Now, the Segol Hey, without a subformative, we see that on most of the others. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them anyway. So comparing that to Yeet Tol, which was he will kill, we have he will build, and we have that Segol Hey ending that is not a subformative. And actually the hey is not even a part of the root. That is an ending for a 3-hey verb. There. And then you can't have two vowels in a row. So when we're looking at yeet to loo, that's they will kill. We have the yod preformative, a shirik subformative. That's a third masculine plural. They, there, they will kill. But when we come to yiv ne u, we can't have a u in a row there. So that isn't going to work. That segol yod has to come out. And so you just have yiv nu. And we still see we have the preformative, preformative, subformative, subformative. And you have the bun like that. It's a verb that's usually has to do with building. So the 3 heys are really 3 yods, and the Segol Hey ending is on forms without subformatives, and the 3 yod drops out with subformatives that begin with a vowel. So we have the U ending. We don't get the yod. We don't get the yod. Whenever we have, but this one, we don't have a vowel ending. We have a na, and so the yod stays. So those are the 3 rules for the 3 heys. Okay. Now we'll move on to geminates on page 170. Geminates is when you have 2 letters, twin letters that look the same. For instance, the first 2 columns are from savav, it means to go around. And then the last one, the third column is from tamam, and means to complete. And so we'll look at those in detail. Before we go back to the screen, though, just looking through the book, again, you see all the preformatives are exactly the same, and the ones that have subformatives, none of that changes in any of these. Now let's look at the details. So 3 types, as we see in the book here, type 1, 2, 3 for geminates. The type of geminate refers to the stem vowel. We have type 1 geminates that have the O vowels. We have type 2 geminates that have O vowels. Notice the difference here is the dagesh. And then but the O vowel is the same. That we have a dagesh in the samach and the one on the right. And then the type 3 have A stem vowels. Yetam. So those are the 3 types. And so the A vowel for the 3rd type. Then just concentrating on the first 2 types. The difference between type 1 and type 2 is the preformative vowels. Okay. So the first one we have a comets, A vowel, and type 2 we have hirik, an I vowel. Okay. Oops. Yeah. Type 1, 2, and 3 all have different preformative vowels. The E vowel, the tsere, for the type 3. The hardest forms to recognize is Qal Imperfect, so the second and third person feminine plural, which they look exactly the same. Okay. This is still from savav, to go around. However, we do see the preformative. We see the preformative. We see the subformative. We see the subformative. And so we know it's going to be either second person or third person feminine plural. This one's really easy because we see that dog ash in the bait, and we know that means there's two baits. And so if we're going to make this out into there's a word we recognize, savav. Okay, he went around. Um, so that makes this one a little bit easier. Um, well, actually, this one is too. We have two mems here, so that's the same way. But the preformatives and subformatives stay the same. Doubly weak, page 171. We've got a number of columns here. The first column, asa, means to do or make. I don't think he has, yeah, there's no labels on here, so if you just want to write them in, you can. Second column is ra'ah, to see, and then haya means to be. It's he was or uh, he will be in the sense of the grade title at the top, that's your Qal Perfect, and so that's he was. When you get down to the next one, right under that's he will be. Um, the next column is yatzad, it means to go out. And then nasa means to lift or carry. If you think of NASA, rockets carrying satellites into space or something like that, or people even, nasa. And then the last column is natan, which means to give. Okay, so that's what the words are. And again, if we just go through and look at them, like the first row here, third masculine singular, you see yod preformative all the way across. It doesn't change, nothing, no subformative. Jump down to three masculine plural, see the yod preformative all the way across. You see the shurik subformative all the way across. Again, they don't change. And so once you memorize those, you should be able to tell, even if you don't know what the word is, you might still be able to say, well, this looks like it's probably a third masculine plural, and you know, probably would be right, unless there's something else at play there. Okay, let's look at the reconstruction. I don't think I have anything else to say about the doubly. It becomes obvious what they are. But when it comes to reconstruction, it's just looking at when you have letters drop out, things change. You have to know what the word is. We have to know what the preformative and subformatives are. We have to know what the number, gender, I mean, yeah, the person, gender, number. We need to know what that is. But we also need to know what the word is so we know how to translate it. And so let's just take some examples here. So sometimes it's a matter of finding a missing letter. Weak verbs with missing letters in the Qal Imperfect. We can have one yods that drop out. And again, halak acts like a one yod. And so the hey will drop out. It'll just act like a one yod. And so a lot of times you'll see halak and it'll just be the lamed kaf. One nouns and also lakak. But the lamed will drop out like a one noon. It'll behave like that. And so we get missing letters from those. Three hays can change to yods. Geminates, you can lose the second letter of the twin. So you have all these things that can happen to your word, and you have to be able to figure out what the word is. So that's what this reconstructing verbal roots section is all about. So what to look for? Look for the preformative vowel, the vowel that's under the preformative. Look for a dogash forte. So let's just start with the first one to look for a preformative vowel. Is the preformative vowel a comets? Yes, we have yasov. This is still that same savav. Savav. So this would be he went around, or he will go around. He will go around. So is it a comets? Yes, it is. It's probably a geminate, and it is, because the other missing letter here would be another bait. And then we can see savav right there. So that's something to look for. Look for the comets. Might be a geminate. if there's a verb consecutive, which we'll study in the next chapter, you can also check by consonantals. We'll talk more about that later. Is the performative vowel a tsere? So here we have yeshvu, yeshavu. And yes, we have a tsere. Well, is it halak? Well, it doesn't look anything like halak because usually halak is always going to have at least those last two letters. Okay, so that's not it. Is it a one yod? Oh, that's a good possibility. It could be a one yod. Or is it a geminate? No, no indication on that. The fact that we have a tsere means there's been compensatory lengthening, and that means that the yod dropped out that was in there. And so this is a one yod verb. But we have the preformative, we have the subformative, they will dwell or they will sit. So that's how we can tell what it is. What to look for. Is there a dogash in the forte? In the first letter after the preformative, like tisa, and we do have a dogash in the first letter after the preformative. This tav is the preformative. Is it halak? No, it's not halak. It doesn't look any of the same, or lakak, I'm sorry. It doesn't look like lakak, because lakak will almost always have the kof and the het there. So it's not lakak. Is it a one noon? Oh, now that's a possibility. And that dogash right there might be because the noon dropped out. Or is it a geminate? Okay, well, in this case, it's the one noon, which means you will pull out or she will pull out or set out. Because this tav could be either a 2ms or a 3fs. So it's either going to be you or she, and context will tell you what to do with that. All right. Is there a dogash forte in the second letter after the preformative? So we have here's your preformative. Here's your subformative. The dogash this is R1, this is R2, and we have the dogash in the R2. Okay. Well, it's probably a geminate, and it is. This is the one we've been looking at, savav. There's another bait here, but it's in the dogash instead. Okay, so it's a geminate. So that's how we can tell that this is what we're going to work with, and this is what happened to it. That's our preformative, and there's our subformative. Okay, look for the preformative vowel. The normal vowel, like here's tisu. Tisu. So we have a preformative, we have a subformative. This is going to be a second masculine plural. Okay, you all will lift, but I'm getting ahead of it. So we have the normal vowel by normal, and we don't have a dogash in either of those two letters. So is it a three hay? No, it doesn't look like it's been a three hay. We can probably have a yod or something there. It's actually it'd be a three aleph is what it would be. Is it lakak? No, it doesn't. I don't see a kof or a het in there. Is it a one noon? That's probably what it is, a one noon. Even though we don't have a dogash there, why don't we have a dogash? It's because we have a vowel subformative. Okay, that's why. And so yes, that is a one noon. And so this will be you all, again, preformative, subformative, 2MP, you all will lift, or you all will carry. Again, the goal is recognizing the word. You have to know what the word is to know how to translate it. And then you also, to be able to translate it, you need to know what the person, gender, number. Is it singular? Is it plural? Is it masculine or is it feminine or common? Is it first, second, or third person? Those are the things that you need to look at and know to be able to do this type of parsing. If it has a preformative, it's going to be the imperfect. If it has a subformative or neither, it's going to be a perfect. And this is important because the derived stems, I know I've already said this about 3 or 4 times, the derived stems use the same preformatives and subformatives. You don't have to relearn them after this. All right, now we're ready to look at biconsonantals. Okay, that's on page 174. And one of the things that really stands out on this is that usually that middle vowel will drop out. We call these hollow verbs, one yod, I mean, not one, two yod and two vav. But in the imperfects, those middle vowels are always there. And so these are really, really easy from that standpoint. And again, the preformatives, subformatives always are the same. The class of the biconsonantal verbs refer to the stem vowel. And so we have like yakum, he will arise. That's a shurik class. We have the hirik yod class, yasim. So kum is to arise. Sim means to put. And then the holam vav class, yavo, he will come or he will enter. It's all, but the class refers to the vowels. The lexical stem vowel is in every single form, so it just makes it easier to look it up. That's why this isn't a part of the reconstruction. The whole thing is already there for you. It didn't drop out. The preformative vowel is the long A vowel in all cases. Okay, again, the important thing, the main goal is to be able to recognize the word and to be able to parse it. We went over vocabulary last week, so we're not going to do it again this week. We're running short on time. So for homework, make sure you have the Qal Imperfect paradigm memorized so you can tell the person, gender, number. Go ahead and work on memorizing chapter 16 vocabulary. For your workbook, you can go ahead and do exercise 16B, the second half, which is 16. And then go ahead and read chapter 17. And don't let that throw you. The Vav consecutive handy tool. And we'll just kind of refer to it as the opposite zone. It might sound like it's tricky or confusing, but it really is very, very simple in the way that it works. So don't get too worried about it. We'll talk about it next week. Any questions? I hear of none, and so we will just be finished.